My name is Mia Xavier, and while my cousin Vanessa was posting Instagram stories about her glamorous life attending exclusive Hollywood events, I was coordinating security protocols for a visiting head of state whose life had been threatened 17 times that month. The irony was delicious, but then again, I'd learned to savor ironies. At 41, I'd become an expert at living in the shadows while Vanessa lived for the spotlight. As a supervisory special agent with the Diplomatic Security Service, the law enforcement and security arm of the U.S. State Department, my job was to be invisible, effective, and always 3 steps ahead. Vanessa's job, as far as I could tell, was to be seen, envied, and always one social connection away from her next opportunity. We'd grown up together, 2 daughters of 2 sisters who'd taken wildly different paths. My mother had been a career diplomat, serious and dedicated. Vanessa's mother had married into entertainment money and never let anyone forget it. Family gatherings had become performances where Vanessa showcased her access to the world of celebrities and exclusive events, while I was the punchline, the cousin with the boring government job who couldn't even talk about what she did. Mia still works for the State Department. Vanessa had announced at my mother's birthday dinner last spring, her voice dripping with performative sympathy. Same position, same little life. It's sweet, really, how some people are just content with mediocrity. I'd smiled into my wine glass. 3 days earlier, I'd coordinated a secure extraction of an ambassador's family from a hostile situation in West Africa. But sure, Vanessa, mediocrity. The thing about working in diplomatic security at my level is that you become a ghost. You protect people who make history, but you can never be part of that history yourself. You travel to extraordinary places and can't post a single photo. You witness world-changing moments and can't tell anyone you were there. To my family, this translated to a life of nothing. No impressive stories, no glamorous photos, no proof that I was anything more than a mid-level bureaucrat shuffling papers in Foggy Bottom. Vanessa, meanwhile, had built an entire identity around proximity to fame. She wasn't famous herself. She was a brand consultant for celebrity clients, which seemed to mean she attended parties and posted about them. Her Instagram was a carefully curated gallery of red carpets, exclusive clubs, and famous faces. She name-dropped constantly and measured her worth in social capital. "You know, Mia, you really should get out more," she'd said at Christmas, examining her perfect manicure. "All work and no play makes for a very dull life. I could probably get you into some events. Nothing too exclusive, of course, but at least you'd have something to talk about at family dinners." I let her believe she was being generous. It was easier than explaining that I'd been in the same room as presidents and prime ministers more times than I could count, that I'd walked red carpets as an advanced security agent before movie stars even arrived, that exclusive was relative when you literally controlled access to some of the most protected people on Earth. The jealousy had started small, years ago, back when we were both trying to figure out our lives. I'd been accepted into the Diplomatic Security Service training program, a competitive, demanding position that fewer than 5% of applicants achieved. Vanessa had been between jobs, between relationships, between identities. At my graduation ceremony, she'd hugged me and whispered, "Must be nice to have such low aspirations." The comment had stung then. Now I recognized it for what it was, the sound of someone who needed me to be small so she could feel large. Over the years, her undermining had become more sophisticated. She never attacked me directly, that would be too obvious. Instead, she positioned herself as the successful one, trying to help her struggling cousin. The condescension was wrapped in concern, the mockery disguised as advice. "Mia's job is so serious," she'd tell people at family gatherings. "No room for fun, no flexibility. I could never live like that. I need freedom, creativity, excitement." The implication was clear. I'd chosen wrong, and she'd chosen right. The truth was more complicated. I'd chosen a life of purpose over a life of performance. I'd chosen substance over shine. And somewhere deep down, Vanessa knew it, which was exactly why she couldn't stop trying to diminish it. "You know what your problem is?" she'd said at Easter, 2 glasses of champagne into the afternoon. "You're invisible. Nobody knows who you are or what you do. I've built a brand, a presence. people know me. She wasn't wrong about the invisible part. In my line of work, invisibility was the goal. The best security is the security no one notices, but I'd learned to enjoy the game of it, letting her think she'd won while I operated in a world she couldn't even imagine. The summer brought a new level to her performance. She'd somehow landed a consulting contract with a major film studio for their upcoming premiere season. Suddenly, every conversation was about movie stars, exclusive parties, and the rarefied world of Hollywood glamour that she now had access to. "It's exhausting, honestly," she'd sighed during a family barbecue in July, making sure everyone could hear. "Back-to-back premieres, after-parties, meeting with A-list clients. I barely have time to breathe. But that's the price of success, I suppose." She'd glanced at me then, that familiar mixture of pity and superiority in her eyes. "Mia, you're so lucky you have a simple job. Predictable hours, no pressure. Must be peaceful." I'd taken a bite of potato salad. The week before, I'd spent 72 hours straight coordinating security for a diplomatic summit involving 12 world leaders and more than 1,000 moving parts. Peaceful wasn't quite the word I'd use. "It has its moments," I'd said mildly. "I'm sure it does," she'd replied, patting my arm. "We can't all be in high-stakes careers. Someone has to do the boring work, right?" My aunt, Vanessa's mother, had actually laughed. Vanessa's always been destined for greatness. Even as a child, she had that star quality. I'd excused myself to take a work call that didn't exist. Sometimes the game was easier to play from a distance. But August brought something new, the premiere, capital P, the way Vanessa talked about it. It was the opening night of a major film franchise, the kind of event that would draw international media attention, a who's who of Hollywood royalty, and the kind of exclusive after-party that became legend. "I'm consulting on the security arrangements," Vanessa had announced at a family dinner, her voice breathless with importance. Well, not the boring Secret Service stuff, obviously, but the VIP experience, making sure the right people get into the right spaces. It's incredibly complex. I'd nearly choked on my water. Diplomatic Security Service agents were, in fact, going to be at that event. I knew because I was leading the team. The film's director was a dual citizen whose controversial political statements had generated credible threats. The studio had requested DSS protection, and I'd spent the last month coordinating with LAPD, private security firms, and the venue to create a layered security protocol that would be invisible to guests but impenetrable to threats. Vanessa had no idea. She thought security meant checking names on a list. "The after-party is going to be insane," she'd continued, pulling out her phone to show everyone the invitation. It was a sleek black card with embossed gold lettering and a holographic wristband attached. "Only 50 people in the entire world get access. 50. And I'm one of them." She'd looked directly at me. "Sorry, cuz it's invited only. No plus ones, no exceptions. The security is going to be serious. I helped design it, so don't even think about trying to sneak in or anything." The table had laughed. The idea of boring government employee Mia trying to crash a Hollywood party was apparently hilarious. "I'll try to contain my disappointment," I'd said dryly. "I'm sure you will," Vanessa had smirked. "It's probably not your scene anyway, too glamorous." What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I'd personally approved every name on that guest list. I'd reviewed the security protocols for the after-party space. I'd walked the venue 3 times, identifying sight lines and exit routes. I'd coordinated with the private security firm about recognition protocols for high-value individuals who might not have formal identification. And I'd made sure that the senior DSS agent on site, me, would have unrestricted access to every space, recognized on site by every security person in the building. The universe, I thought, had a wicked sense of humor. The night of the premiere arrived with typical Los Angeles fanfare. I'd been on site since 2 p.m., conducting final security sweeps and briefing the team. By the time the red carpet opened at 6 p.m., I'd walked every inch of the venue, checked every entry point, and ensured that our protectee had a secure route from arrival to screening to after-party. I was wearing my standard field attire, dark suit, low heels, an earpiece concealed by my hair, and my credentials on a lanyard beneath my jacket. To anyone who knew what to look for, I was obviously federal law enforcement. To everyone else, I looked like a well-dressed woman in black, easily ignored in a sea of glamour. The screening went smoothly. No incidents, no threats, just a successful evening of Hollywood spectacle. By 9:30 p.m., the film had ended and guests were beginning to move toward the exclusive after-party space, a rooftop lounge that had been transformed into something out of a dream, all ambient lighting and panoramic views of the city. I was monitoring the transition when I spotted my family arriving. My mother, my aunt, my uncle, and Vanessa, dressed in something expensive and shimmering, her wristband displayed prominently as she posed for photos with people I recognized from my advance work. They hadn't seen me. I was just another dark-suited figure in the background, exactly where I was trained to be. I watched Vanessa work the crowd, her phone constantly out, documenting everything. She was in her element, the center of her own narrative, the star of her own show. And I felt something unexpected. Not anger, but a kind of bemused affection. She needed this so badly. This validation, this proof of her worth, measured in access and attention. I needed different things. I needed to know that the people under my protection made it home safely. I needed to know that I'd done my job so well that no one even realized I'd done it at all. The crowd began moving toward the elevator banks that would take them up to the rooftop. I did a final check with my team, all clear, all secure, and followed at a distance. My job wasn't over until every protectee was safely away from the venue. The rooftop was spectacular. Los Angeles spread out beneath us like a carpet of lights, the air warm and perfect, the music carefully curated to be sophisticated but not overwhelming. Vanessa was immediately in the center of it, laughing with people she probably barely knew, her phone capturing every moment. I stayed near the perimeter, watching, assessing, constantly aware of exits and sightlines. My protectee was engaged in conversation with the film's producer, relaxed and enjoying the evening, which meant I was doing my job correctly. Mia? I turned to find my mother standing there, looking confused and slightly uncomfortable in her cocktail dress. She didn't belong in this world any more than I did, but she'd come to support Vanessa. Mom, what are you doing here? Your cousin got us passes to the screening. Not this part, though. We're supposed to leave after we see the view. She glanced around nervously. What are you doing here? I thought you were working tonight. I am working. Her confusion deepened. Here? But this is a movie premiere. Before I could answer, Vanessa's voice cut through the ambient noise. Mom? What are you doing over? She spotted me and her face went through a rapid series of expressions. Surprise, confusion, then something harder. Suspicion. Mia? What are you doing here? Working, I said simply. Working? She laughed, sharp and disbelieving. At a movie premiere? Did you get hired as catering or something? Other family members had drifted over, drawn by the confusion. My aunt, my uncle, a couple of cousins I barely knew. And behind them I could see other guests beginning to notice the small drama unfolding. You need to leave, Vanessa said, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Seriously, Mia, the security here doesn't mess around. I told you this was invite only. You can't just crash because you're jealous of my life. I'm not crashing, I said calmly. Then what are you doing here? She crossed her arms, her holographic wristband catching the light. Because I know for a fact you're not on the guest list. I helped create it. Did you? I kept my voice neutral, almost curious. Yes, so unless you have one of these... She held up her wrist, showing the exclusive band. You need to go, now, before you embarrass yourself and me. The small crowd around us had grown. People were watching now, drawn by the tension. The arena Vanessa had always craved. The audience she'd always played to. Except this time, she'd misread the script. Vanessa, my mother said quietly, maybe we should just... No, Mom. Mia needs to learn that she can't just show up to things because she's jealous. This is my world, my event, my access. She turned back to me, and in her eyes I saw years of insecurity wearing the mask of superiority. Sorry, cuz. It's for invited only. The security here is serious. Don't even try to sneak in. The moment hung there, perfect and sharp. I could have walked away, I probably should have walked away. But the universe had handed me this gift, and I'd spent 20 years being underestimated by someone who needed me to be less so she could feel like more. Sometimes, the universe demands you accept its gifts. I know, I said. I walked toward the main entrance to the rooftop lounge, where the security checkpoint stood. Behind me, I could hear Vanessa's confused protest, my mother's worried voice, the murmur of curious onlookers. The head of security at the checkpoint was a man named Rodriguez, 6'4", former Special Forces, handpicked by my team for this assignment. We'd met 3 times during planning sessions. He knew exactly who I was. I didn't reach for my credentials. I didn't say a word. Rodriguez saw me approaching and immediately straightened. His hand moved away from the tablet where he'd been checking wristbands. His entire demeanor shifted from gatekeeper to subordinate. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet rooftop, "please go right in. Everything is ready for your arrival." He stepped aside, creating a clear path into the lounge's inner sanctum, the space beyond the already exclusive after-party, where only the most important guests were allowed. I could feel every eye on me. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant sound of the city below and the soft music filtering from inside. I didn't look back at Vanessa. I didn't need to. I simply walked through, and Rodriguez fell into step behind me, his voice low and professional. "Agent Xavier, the package is secure. The principal is ready to depart in 20 minutes. Your team is standing by." "Thank you, Rodriguez." Behind me, I heard something shatter, a glass, dropped from nerveless fingers. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. I heard my aunt's strangled, "Oh my God!" And I heard Vanessa's silence, the silence of someone whose entire worldview had just imploded in the space of 10 seconds. I paused at the threshold to the inner lounge, finally allowing myself to turn back. The crowd had parted around my family, leaving them exposed in the center of the rooftop. Vanessa's face was the color of chalk, her mouth open, her phone hanging forgotten in her hand. My mother looked stunned. My aunt appeared to be experiencing some kind of existential crisis. And everyone else, all those people Vanessa had been so desperate to impress, was looking at her with expressions ranging from confusion to pity to barely concealed amusement. "Enjoy the party," I said quietly, the words for Vanessa but carrying to everyone. Then I turned and walked into the inner sanctum, Rodriguez closing the door behind us. Inside, my protectee looked up from their conversation and smiled. "Everything all right, Agent Xavier?" "All secure, sir. Just a minor family matter." They laughed. "Those can be more complicated than international incidents sometimes." "Sometimes," I agreed. Through the tinted glass, I could see Vanessa still standing frozen, her mother clutching her arm, people beginning to whisper and point. She'd wanted an audience. She'd gotten one. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, "Call me, please. I don't understand what just happened." I would call her later. After the protectee was safely away, after the venue was cleared, after I'd completed my job. I'd explain what I could explain, which wasn't much. I'd tell her that yes, I worked for the Diplomatic Security Service. Yes, I'd been working tonight. No, I couldn't discuss the details. But the damage, or perhaps the healing, was already done. The next morning, I woke to 47 missed calls and twice as many texts. Most were from family members, their messages ranging from shocked to apologetic to demanding explanation. But one stood out, from Vanessa, sent at 3:17 a.m. "I didn't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what I thought. Can we talk?" I looked at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "There's nothing to apologize for. You didn't know because I couldn't tell you. That's the job." Her response came immediately, like she'd been waiting. "But all those things I said, all those years, God, Mia, you've been exactly who you needed to be, just like I have. I don't understand." "I know, and that's okay." I set the phone down and looked out my window at the morning light spilling over the city. Somewhere out there, a head of state was boarding a secure flight home. protected by protocols I'd designed and agents I'd trained. Somewhere a threat had been neutralized before it could materialize, because people like me did our jobs in the shadows. And somewhere, a woman who'd built her identity on being seen was learning that the most powerful people are often the ones you never notice. My mother called an hour later. "Mia, I need to understand. What exactly do you do?" "I protect people, Mom, important people, people who change the world." "But you've never said, all these years, you've just said you worked for state." "Because I couldn't say more. The work requires confidentiality. It always has." A long pause. Then, "Vanessa is devastated. She keeps saying she's been horrible to you." "She's been jealous. There's a difference." "You're not angry?" I thought about that. Was I angry? 20 years of condescension, of being made to feel small, of watching someone else take credit for a life of glamour while I lived a life of purpose in silence. "No," I said, surprised to find it was true. "I'm not angry. I made my choices knowing what they'd cost. She made hers too. We just chose different currencies." "She wants to apologize." "Tell her there's no need. Tell her I hope the party was everything she wanted." Because it was over now, not our relationship, but the game. The performance where she'd needed me to be her supporting cast, the disappointing cousin who made her shine by comparison. That story had ended the moment Rodriguez recognized me without question, the moment her exclusive world revealed that I'd always had access to rooms she couldn't even imagine. The tragedy wasn't that she'd underestimated me, the tragedy was that she'd needed to. But maybe now we could both stop playing parts. Maybe now we could just be two women who'd made different choices and learned to live with them. Maybe that was possible. Or maybe some gaps can't be bridged, and that's okay too. I went back to work on Monday. The premiere was already fading into memory, just another successful assignment in a career full of them. My team performed a routine debrief, we filed our reports, and we moved on to the next protection detail. "Heard you had some family drama at the event," Rodriguez said during our post-op meeting, a hint of a smile on his usually stern face. "Word travels fast." "Small world, federal law enforcement. For what it's worth, you handled it with class." "I didn't handle anything, I just did my job." Exactly. And that, in the end, was what mattered. Not the reversal, not the shock on Vanessa's face, not the viral moment she'd probably never lived down in her social circles. What mattered was that I'd kept someone safe. What mattered was that I'd done my job so well that most people didn't even know I was doing it. But now my family knew. And in knowing, maybe they'd finally understand why I'd chosen this path. Why I'd embraced invisibility over recognition, substance over performance, purpose over prestige. Or maybe they wouldn't understand, and that was okay too. Because I understood, and in the end, that